All right, welcome back to the RunThrough Trails podcast for another episode, yet another guest with a bit of a unique twist on today's episode. So first of all, welcome Ed Gwynne-Harris, our guest today.
Nice to be here. Thanks very much.
Yeah, great to have you. Thanks for taking the time. So Ed actually was kind of brought to my attention by Ben Shepherd, who interviewed me on the previous podcast. And any of you who listen to the Gone Running podcast, the RunThrough podcast, Ben plays a huge part on that as host, and he also helps us organize a lot of the guests and influencers and stuff who appear on all of the podcasts across all the RunThrough platforms. And I believe you and Ben are childhood friends, Ed.
We are indeed. Ben and I went to school together, went to primary school, secondary, and have been friends since the first day we met. So yeah, I've known him for many years.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, anyone that's met Ben or interacted with Ben will know he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's really into his running, but also does a lot of like crazy challenges and trail runs. I made the mistake the other day of saying, "Oh, Ben, have you run 50K?" And he was like, "I've done a 24-hour race on the track, mate."
Yeah.
So yeah, he's no stranger to these types of adventures. But the reason you came up in conversation, Ed, was because this year, for the first time, we've got a new RunThrough Trails Summit Series event in the Brecon Beacons, and it's kind of a bit of a lesser known area of the UK with regards to trail running and outdoor sports and adventure. And obviously this is your part of the world. And we're going to get into kind of what makes you a little bit of an expert in the area and some of the projects that you've worked on. But you mind starting us out with a little bit of background about yourself, when you grew up and how you got into running in the outdoors?
Yeah. So yeah, as mentioned, I grew up in the Beacons with Ben, and yeah, I think as a child, you don't necessarily appreciate the environment that you live in. I mean, I got brought up doing lots of sports, being outdoors, but I never really, I don't think, like, for example, Pen y Fan, which is the biggest one, right, biggest hill around here. I don't think I went up there until I was in my late teens, because I didn't care for the outdoors that much. I went outdoors, but I didn't really care a huge amount about being outdoors that much. And then classically went off to university, had lots of fun, and when I came back every so often to see family, I started to sort of appreciate it more. I'd always been into running, with school I'd done cross country, and I did a bit of a very niche thing called triathlon, which involved horse riding and a bit of running. So I'd always done running, but went off to uni, played football, partied, the standard thing at university. And then it wasn't until we decided to enter, my brother and I and a couple of friends from the area decided to enter a triathlon on a whim, did no training. I was at the hardest event I've ever done. It was a 70.3 event, and I was exhausted, just the fact I did no training. And then we did lots of triathlon then for a few years, and then I just I'd always enjoyed the running aspect of triathlon, and I always found swimming awful. I found the bike a little bit arduous with the time and the boredom, but I'd always enjoyed the running aspect. So I started then to focus more on running, and then it slowly sort of developed from there, from marathons and road running all through to trail. And it wasn't until I think just before COVID, really, where I'd started to, I think I did my first ultra in like 2018, 2019, thoroughly enjoyed it, and hadn't really sort of focused on it. And it wasn't, I think it was back end of 2018 where I thought I really want to start to try and focus on this now, and did a couple of events, and then it was obviously everyone got affected by COVID, and things stopped, and I was spending lockdown. I came back to my family home and spent lockdown just exploring the Beacons, really. And then after that was really when I started to get more focus on the ultra running and trail running as well, because yeah, it was just something I thoroughly enjoyed, just exploring new areas, and it was very enjoyable doing it at home, having spent years looking at it at the hills and actually going into it and seeing it, seeing the views that you can experience, and also the not so much, I know, rugged terrain, but it can be relatively gnarly around here in places.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How would you describe, so like a lot of our listeners, and we chatted a little bit before the before the podcast, like if you were to ask somebody what are the most kind of spectacular, well-known parts of the UK, if you're thinking about trail running, most people are going to say the lakes, right? First of all.
Yeah.
And then they're going to start talking about Snowdonia. And then they might get into, depending on where they're from, Scotland, maybe some of the Peak District, definitely South Coast, even like Southwest out around Cornwall, Alpha Patrician, that type of area. I don't think many people would talk about Mid Wales. We talk about Shropshire. We talk about Brecon Beacons, that region. How would you describe the character of the Brecon Beacons and the trail running there compared to places like the lakes and the peaks and different areas people might be more aware of?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because it's something that, and part of the reason sort of I'll touch on it a bit later as well, is part of the reason we made the Gwyn-Harris Round was because it's so much more accessible for running. It's rolling terrain. It's relatively easy when I'm obviously talking relative, because running isn't necessarily easy, but if you want to get into trail running, if you want to get into ultra running, it's such a good place to start and experience it, because there isn't any of those or isn't many of those really rugged terrain, and it's very well pathed, where it's very well trodden, which obviously I know there's some negative connotations around that, but it's a really good place to start your journey into ultra running and trail running, because it is much easier. We think about Scotland, and well, Scotland in particular, massive hills with that you get above a certain point, it becomes really rocky, and you can get caught in some quite dangerous situations. But I've personally never experienced that in the Beacons, but it's not to say that it obviously can't happen, but it's just much more. I always think it's much more accessible for people starting out their journey in trail running, and the other thing is it's actually much easier to get to than a lot of these places. That I live in Wales, and getting to Snowdonia takes me 4 hours, and it's just not an easy place to get to. And obviously Scotland will take at least a day to get to from anywhere, really. So yeah, it's accessible for two different reasons, really.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like just the technicality of places. We saw this with the lakes event that we put on earlier this year. We had a lot of our audience, like Run Through Trails audience, coming after taking part in races like Lady Bower Reservoir, for example, in the Peak District, which has some technicality, but it's again quite accessible, pretty rolling. Some other events down in Surrey that we do, like the Fox stuff at Box Hill, there's some technicality involved. There's a lot of like Britishness in terms of when I think of British trail running, especially down south, I'm thinking like muddy cow fields and styles of gates, that technicality, but not extreme talus, loose rock, scrambly kind of any sort of exposure. But as soon as you go up Scarfell or Grey Gable on that late 50k route, we had loads of runners coming back saying, wow, we loved it, but I wasn't loving it in the moment.
Yeah. It's like I would say the type 2 fun, as they say, is much much easier to manage it in the Beacons than it is in the Lake District. Like there's some parts of the lakes that you'll go up a hill and you end up climbing at like 30-minute miles because it's just impossible to run it. So whereas I would say there are certainly some areas of some of the corners of the Beacons where you can experience that, but on the whole it's a lovely place to run. And if you have spent lots of time on the road and want to explore trails, it's the perfect place to do that.
Nice, awesome. Well, that's a huge part of our market. We have the Discover Series events, which are like a bit of a step in, Panic Chase, Wimbledon Common. Like a lot of people, true trail runners would probably say, they're not really trail races. And I've definitely had those thoughts. But in terms of providing a bit of a transition from road to trail, I think stuff like that's quite nice. Nice and simple, accessible, not intimidating at all. Just gives you a little taste of like, oh, actually, it's quite nice running in trees instead of down an A road. As cool as that could be. But funnily enough, for me, so when I was a kid, I read a lot of I was quite into the SAS and like army stories, and Andy McNabb books, and Hereford is where the SAS are based, and don't they do a lot of their they do a lot of training and like fitness testing and stuff in the Beacons? And so in my head, I always saw it as this like sort of quite bleak, quite unhospitable kind of aesthetic, but in a really unique way, like that rolling browny orangey kind of. Yeah, I don't know. Bleak doesn't sound like an appealing word, but I kind of mean it in an aesthetic way, where people would go and kind of test themselves in challenging weather and challenging terrain. Like, is that really true?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can always, whenever you spend some time in the hills, it can be bleak and horrible. If we're in the UK, it's inevitable that you get caught in times like that. And I think it's interesting you mentioned about SAS, because I think there was a story, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but about, I think there was a team of SAS people that died. And I think that almost makes people scared of it a little bit, but actually when you understand the circumstances they were in, that, that it probably wasn't the most ideal day to be out, etc., etc. But I don't think it's like that at all. But as we mentioned, there are certain elements that are a little bit more gnarly, a little bit more bleak. But I would say on the whole, for anyone sort of coming into it, it's nothing to be scared of at all. It's very rolling, very pathy, and very accessible.
Lovely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's something that we talk about quite a lot, the difference between the trail running market and what people are looking for versus the road running market. And obviously a lot of the time on the road, it's all about fast, flat PB course, run a fast time with a deep field, be pulled along to a PB, blah, blah, blah. Love it. Like, all about it. And I completely understand that that's a huge focus for a lot of people. But then when you get into trail running, it is a slightly different message. Like, we want to still make things accessible, and have as many people be able to come and take part safely as possible, which is obviously what we try and do as event organizers. But with that being said, you don't want to start an ultra distance trail race thinking it's going to be easy, and you maybe don't even want to start knowing that you're going to be able to complete it. So there is a level of like aspiration, self-actualization. That's where our tagline "Run Inspired" kind of comes from, because it feels different crossing the finish line after you've been out in the wind and the rain in the hills, and you've had like a full-on 10-hour experience of lived 15 lives out there, and then cross the finish line. That is a different feeling than just finishing a marathon in a particular time.
For sure. No, I think you're absolutely right, and it's very different to that marathon or road running mindset, where it's very much about a time. Don't get me wrong, you'll always have a time aspiration when you stand on the start line, but I do often feel that because you never know what can happen with in a trail run or in an ultra distance race, that that time frame that you could complete in, it becomes a little bit more extended. So I think that's the beauty of it. You're managing so much more than just I guess looking at your watch and things. There's the elevation to take into account. There's your nutrition and fueling to take into account as well. So there's a lot more different elements, I always think, that trail running than there is to a much more sort of manageable road race.
Yeah, like that controllable environment where you can all you care about is your 5K split or whatever. No, totally. I mean, obviously a lot of this chat's going to be around the round that you created, and even what a round is, and the experiences you had along the way, and the little documentary that you guys made about it. But I'm also interested, I think for me, another huge part of trail running and running in general, and of RunThrough as a business, is all about the running communities involved. And I think the Lake District and the Peak District and Snowdonia, like, part of the reason why these places are so well known as hubs, specifically the Lake District, is like the history, the community, the running culture. Like, everyone loves an old race. Everyone loves an FKT that's been in place for 20 years. Like, something spectacular about Killian coming and, getting a record on the Bob Graham Round. It attracts people from all over the world. So what's the situation? Is there much of a trail running community in the Beacons?
Yeah, there. In all fairness, I think there is a trail running community, and it's I moved back about 18 months ago to the area, and I've definitely found there is a trail community, but I don't think it ever will be as strong as the Lake District, for many reasons, because that's arguably where fell running began. But you can't fight against that. I always felt like it wasn't as big as it could be, and I know from watching things online and doing things, if you wanted to do the Bob Graham, you could find 10-15 pacers that would be willing to do it the next day if needs be. And I just feel as though that didn't quite exist in the Beacons, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to create a round as such, because the round it's sort of captures the imagination going from one point, doing a circle around the area, and it's the Bob Graham rings true in many people's ears when you talk about the round, and that's kind of something obviously on a much smaller scale that we wanted to try and create. And I think by doing that, hopefully attracting more people to the Beacons and experiencing what it has to offer, because I know I'm biased, but I think it's one of the nicest places in the UK, and again, it's just much easier to start the journey here than it is to go and do the Bob Graham round.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, let's dive into that. I mean, first things first, obviously, we are a trail running podcast, but we do have listeners kind of come from all different places, whether that's Europe, the US. We're starting to build a bit more of listenership over there as the brand expands into those countries, but also people coming from road running, like I've mentioned a few times. So I remember reading Feet in the Clouds, and I remember kind of how I learned about the fell running community and all that stuff when I first moved back to the UK a few years ago. But maybe can you give us a little bit of well, I don't want to put you on the spot and ask for a definition, but like, what do we mean by round? Because I know the Bob Graham round, I know the Paddy Buckley round, I know that there are loads more that I'm probably missing, but like, what is a round, and what do you think is the appeal about that format of challenge? Because it's not really a race, is it? It's an FKT, it's the fastest known time, it's a peak bagging, it's a combination of a load of different kind of cultural elements.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on it. I think before you speak about round, you've got to kind of speak about FKTs, which have been going on for many years before the internet exists, but now there's sort of a website for them. But FKT stands for, if you don't already know, listeners don't already know, fastest known time. And it's, I guess what captures imagination about it, it's just like very measurable race against yourself, against another person, but they're not necessarily, they're not there to chase on the day. It's you're on your own, and you're basically with yourself, with your own mind to try and beat a time that has existed previously. I think one of the rules that has to be abided by is that it can't be during a race. So it's basically just a route that has been created by someone, and anyone can go onto the website and create a fastest known time. It can be your local route in your local area. It doesn't have to be anything of significance. In the Bob Graham Round, there's about 42 different peaks, and there's the route isn't necessarily set from peak to peak. You find the quickest route ultimately. So if your skill sets are going downhill, then you'll find the quickest way to go downhill, the best way for you, and you'll have to go out and recce it and do these, find the best route that suits you. And I think what's so great about it is the fact that there isn't a race involved. It is just the time, and you're racing against someone who's potentially created that route, or even just got the fastest time on that route. And I think that's one thing that captured my imagination. We wanted to create that here, because ultimately in the Beacons that there wasn't one. So it was a great process to try and sort of start to create one and find the best way to do that.
I mean, it's such a cool project. It's very similar to what I do as a job, which is why I love it so much. Is I sit down with the map and I think, where would I run?
Yeah.
And then I go and check it out, and I think, all right, that's awful. That's really sketchy. Let's move that. Let's tweak this. And you're basically trying to like craft this really aesthetic loop or out and back or point to point or whatever it is, that has character and like feels as if it has a purpose and shows off the area. You are essentially creating a race. It's just that it's like you said, I don't know, it's like a Strava segment, Strava segment is like a tiny chop down. It's not your 100 meters outside your house Strava segment. We're talking about longer segments. But I first came across FKTs when I lived out in Canada. There was a really big culture around it, actually. And there was a lot of really good local runners and local skiers who kind of crafted all these FKTs. And some of them would just be maybe 5K with 1,000 meters of climbing up to a specific peak, like almost like a VK type of thing in Europe. And some of them would be huge multi-day traverses across the coast mountains. But there was just this culture, and the local shops had like chalkboards on the wall with the current times. And that's where I was first introduced to the website. And I really liked the idea, because it's a very different experience from a race. And I think it appeals to people, which I imagine you would fall into this, with a bit of an analytical mind. So you don't want running to just be a physiology test. You want to do the planning and the strategy and get the right weather and go out with the recce's. And it's like this big, you can invest like a year into prepping. Someone that really comes to mind on this is, I'll say his name wrong, but Jack Kuetzel, the guy who's been trying to take like Killings Mont Blanc times, and really, really good American runner, had ski mountaineer, who's been attacking a load of big FKTs recently. And the reason he comes to mind is he actually coaches Caleb Olson, who recently won Western States, and we just had on the podcast. And again, same thing with Jack. From reading his social media posts and learning more about him, he's incredibly analytical. They're looking for every second. Like, what's the perfect time on Mont Blanc where there's enough snow where I can boot ski down, but there's not too much snow where I can climb up quick? And do I take skis? Do I not? Like, am I going to go supported or unsupported? You can kind of like play with the game. So, so had you done another round or any sort of longer FKTs before you decided to try and create what you created in the Beacons?
So I hadn't done the rounds or FKTs actually. I'd only been only done races and those because, and the only reason I came up with it is because COVID started and there was no races on. So I thought I'd come up with the idea. We actually ended up doing it quite a bit after COVID, when sort of restrictions opened up, and I didn't want to do it in winter ultimately. So we did it in April 21, I think it was. Yeah, I hadn't done anything. The only thing similar I had done to it, and I'd always heard about, was the Bob Graham, which we'd done with my partner, and we did it in August bank holiday, the second August bank holiday, and the conditions were absolutely dreadful. It rained the whole time. We didn't have the right kit or anything, and we ended up sort of packing in, I think, 2/3 of the way around. So that's the only real experience I had, and we weren't going for a time then. We were just doing it for enjoyment, but I'd always known that Bob Graham. I think at the time I was doing it, I had never heard of FKTs, and it wasn't until I realized, oh, you could create your own. Oh, there's other ones out there. So that's really what sort of made me want to do it. But and actually, since I've not done any FKT since. It's the only one I've ever done, and it's I don't know why that is. It's something I think they're great, but it's just, the time element and sort of finding one that has sort of meaning is, I find, sort of is probably more important to me.
Yeah, it's a big investment. I mean, creating your own is a whole different level. But even taking part in something like the Bob Graham, you don't just rock up and do it. And like you say, it's a long way for you to travel to. I mean, I suppose that's another big difference between like a round or an FKT and a race. Is for a race, you need to train and maybe look at maps and make a bit of a strategy. But at the end of the day, you rock up on the day, it's all marked, all the aid stations are out, and you kind of don't need to think. You just need to run. Whereas with these, there is a lot more to it.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. So you said it was around COVID and post-COVID, you decided you wanted to create this round. I know you've already kind of touched on it, but if you had to summarize, like in a couple of sentences, why you decided to put all the work into doing this, what would you say? Was it more about sharing the area? Was it more about a personal challenge? Was it about leaving something with your name on it for the future? Because that felt like a cool way to kind of contribute to the running culture.
I think it was, the biggest thing was just getting the beacons out there and in the forefront of people's minds when it comes to trail running, because I think it has such a big part to play in that whole community. So that was always the driving force, and yes, it's nice to have your name on it, but I don't think that sort of springs to mind when people think about it too much. But I think the biggest driver was just trying to sort of build a community of trail runners and bring more people to the area, because I think, as we have touched on, I think it's undervalued for what it can offer, and it's just such a beautiful place to explore.
Awesome. So what are the first steps for all the listeners out there that want to create their own round? What did you do? Obviously, you knew the area a bit already, but what was the first thing that you did?
Yeah, I did know the area, and with COVID and things, I had started exploring it more, but I by no means touched enough of it in order to create a round. And I think that the first thing I really did was look over maps and think where's actually possible to to start to create this, because if you don't know the beacon, it's actually quite a narrow area. So creating a round was actually a little bit more difficult. And I was also thinking about what I want from it. And one of the big things that I wanted from it was actually that en route it almost feels like there's no there's nothing around you. So there's no point you can really stop at a shop. There's no way you can stop it and get any amenities. You are very much in the outdoors and in the bleak mountains the whole time. And I think that's one thing that I really wanted to create from it, that if you're going and doing, you do have to rely on your navigational ability, but also you need to rely on your fueling, because you can't just hop into a shop on the way. And that's one thing that I really wanted to get to it. So when I looked at the map, I sort of looked at rough areas in which that I wanted to go to, and plotted on the map which hills I think I wanted in it. And then it was just a case of the areas that I hadn't been to, going out and seeing, how do you get from this hill to this hill? Is it possible? Obviously everyone knows that there's lots of farming in Wales, so is it cut off by farmland or anything? So it's trying to find the best route. I had some incredibly dodgy recce's when I went out there. I dragged my brother along, and we did I think it was about 6 miles in about 4 hours, just looking for the best route past this one area. It turned out I just misread the map a little bit, and we were trying to just go through farmland, which we shouldn't have been doing. But obviously, without going out and looking at it and see what's possible, you can't, there's only so much. Person with the map reading skills of me, my ability, there's only so much you can get for a map. So that was one of the big things. And there was lots of failed recce's that you went on and just thought, this isn't possible, this doesn't feel quite right. So it was, and also using capturing the main hills is something that I wanted to do, obviously. So it was trying to sort of plot a route between them and see what worked. And once I'd sort of figured it out and got a blueprint, I actually, just due to the time, I never found the best routes between the hills. I know for a fact that if anyone wanted to do it, and spent some time actually going and recceing and finding the best routes through there's quite a lot of time that could be cut, and distance, to be honest, that would be cut off the route, because I just didn't have the time and to go and do it, because I was living away from the beacons at that time. So yeah, and then it was, I think when it came to actually doing it, I had done probably 95% of it, but there were still some elements that we hadn't done. So it was just yeah, I think if anyone wants to do it, it's a relatively easy process to do, but it's the longer you make it, the more challenging it becomes.
Yeah. Where did you land with statistics? What was the total distance and total elevation gain on the route that you took?
I think it was 75 miles in total. I think you could probably get it down to, I'm speculating without having it in front of me, but probably about 73, 72, okay. Which actually, I think the speed I was going at was sort of 12, 13-minute miles or something. So that takes off nearly half an hour off the possible time. So yeah, I think that, yeah, and then the elevation I think was probably about 20,000 feet in total, okay. Which yeah, that would almost definitely remain, because you're going up and down.
Yeah. So you're talking over 6,000 meters, over 100 kilometers.
Yeah,
kind of, like whatever metric. And how long did it take when you did complete the round? What was your time?
I think it was about 18 and a half hours.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, I think you could probably, as I said, a few people have done it since. So I think there's definitely opportunity to take time off.
Nice. And so when you actually did it, so you've sat down with the maps, you've gone out and done the recce's, you've kind of got your head around 95% of the route. So how did you go about kind of choosing the day when you were going to do the race? What type of weather were you looking for? And did you do it completely unsupported, or did you have any external aid? I know you said it's difficult to find shops and stuff, but were you refueling from like a friend's car at road crossings or anything, or did you start with what you needed and then finish completely alone?
So yeah, I was supported. So I had friends, family, Ben, who was doing some filming and was also giving out nutrition and things. So I did do it supported, but yeah, there are different elements to FKTs as unsupported, supported, etc. So yeah, this one was a supported effort. And in terms of finding the day to do it, we got incredibly lucky. It was April, and the weather was perfect. It had been dry for quite a few weeks, and it was actually sunny weather. It was quite chilly overnight, because naturally when you're doing 18 hours, you do go into the night, and it was quite chilly and blustery for the last sort of 5-6 hours, but by that point you're pretty much near the end anyway. And I can't remember why we did it in April, because thinking about it, it does seem like it's almost a bit too early when you're relying on the weather. I think it's because I had another race and I didn't want to do it too close to that. But yeah, we were incredibly lucky with it being, and I think we did have 2 or 3 weekends where we could have done it, and we obviously checking the weather, and that was the one that we landed on. And yeah, as I said, we did get incredibly lucky with the weather.
Nice. And how about what were the hardest moments during the round? Because I imagine you're out there for 18 hours. There's going to be some highs, some lows. So
yeah.
Any particularly memorable lows where you were really struggling with it?
There was quite a few lows, to be honest. One thing I've never been good at is fueling. I'm quite blasé with it, and my biggest flaw is that I don't train enough on what I fuel on race day. So actually within probably the first 3 or 4 hours, I'd got really bad indigestion, and that basically meant I just don't eat enough and drink enough throughout, and that carried on throughout the whole race. So there's elements, there's sort of me being captured eating during on the video that we created, and I don't actually eat a huge amount. I dread to think what the calorie deficit I was in after it, but that was one thing that I always struggled with and really struggled with on the day. And then it's just one of the biggest memories I've got from it was probably 8 o'clock in the evening. It had pitch black by that point, being April, and I had to go from Story Arms, which is like where everyone goes walking at Pen y Fan, and I had my last time I was going to see my crew for the last sort of 8 miles or 10 miles or so. Sent me off into the rain, into the wind, barely moving by this point, just dragging myself along. And I just remember thinking, God, what the hell am I doing at this point, when you're just driving rain against your face? And genuinely got to the top of Pen y Fan, like barely able to stand because the wind's so powerful. So yeah, there was definitely some dark moments across it. And it's not until you luckily go back and view it that you remember actually that it had such a great day to do it on, and the weather was fantastic. But your overriding memory is just how sort of the pain that you go through. But no, go and do it. It's great. You'll have a great time.
Yeah, selling it. Sounds really well. So how about highlight moment? Obviously finishing is always a highlight, and starting is always that nice like anticipation. But during the round, were there particular moments, maybe like, I don't know, like a sunset or a particular view or a particular part of the course that you liked, or anything that stands out in your memory?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It was captured in the video, which was one of the areas I always think of the beacons. My favorite spot is it's called like the Black Vans, I think it's called, which is where Linie van Vark and Linie van Bauer are, which are sort of over Carmarthenshire area, which is like the west side of the beacons. And it was probably around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was just it was the perfect conditions, and Ben and Toby, who were filming it, knew it was the perfect conditions, and just got me to sit looking out at the view at one point, and just that moment just really dawned on me, just, well, one, how far I'd come, but also how lucky we were to sort of catch this day and to be able to create this round together with sort of my two of my really close friends. So yeah, that was one of the moments that really sticks with me. And then having there actually wasn't many people at the finish. It was my partner Ben and Toby and his partner who were there because it was quite late at night. But having my family the whole time there and supporting me was just a moment that it's not something that you'll ever get to experience, where they're just supporting you. And obviously in a race they come and support, but there's also lots of other people. But it was just lovely to have that sort of personal moment together with them.
Yeah, it's just such a unique format to do this type of thing. Like you say, you don't have the same, you're not running down the big finish funnel with the gantry and the atmosphere and the MC calling your name, but probably means 10 times more after what you just
Absolutely.
been through, kind of, the value it has to you. It actually reminds me of the first kind of proper trail run that I ever did. There's a trail in Cheshire called the Sandstone Trail. And it's about, I'm going to get this wrong, but I want to say it's about 50k, 58k, something like maybe 60. And I decided I'd do it as a charity thing. My girlfriend, now wife, was working for charity at the time, and massively underestimated it, completely unprepared, and just really suffered from like 20 miles on. It was a real struggle. But I remember finishing it, and it finishes just like this big stone in a car park, and it was like me and my wife and like one mate. But it was the best thing.
Yeah, it's lovely,
coolest
isn't it?
moment ever. Yeah, it's just different experience.
It is very different, and I mean, people may think that, and some of the best experience you will have when you race is coming through, like you mentioned, that finishers funnel and people cheering on. But like for example, like an Ironman, for example, it's an amazing experience. But there's something just very different about the whole FKT experience, where it is just your family and friends who are there, and they don't need to be there, but they're there for you and to support you. And it is a lovely feeling, and it's something that I will definitely cherish.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, we've mentioned the video that you guys made, the documentary about the round, which obviously we'll share in the description of the video, podcast, and everything. So Ben sent that to me first when we announced the Brecon Beacons event months ago, and so I watched it then, but I just watched it again recently before because I knew obviously we were going to have this chat. So you mentioned that one of the main kind of reasons why you wanted to do the round was to kind of share this part of the world that was so special to you with the running community. So it makes a lot of sense that you would make a video off the back of that. But how did that come about? Have you got any experience with that type of thing, or was it Ben pushing the idea, or
yeah, absolutely no experience. And so I think the way it came about was I messaged Ben to say, I've got this idea of creating a round, and obviously the background he's brought that expertise and said this would be a great idea to create a video from. And we've got another friend who I'd mentioned earlier called Toby, who's in sort of the he's in the sort of directing film world. So he brought a sort of different element of expertise to it, and we all got together. And from my perspective, it sounded like a ridiculous idea to create this film, because I just thought, like, one, who's going to watch it, and two, how are we even going to create it when we because I just don't have any of that knowledge or anything, but because they carried it ultimately when it came to that side of things, and they were great. And it was Toby's idea as well to bring North Face into it, and they supported it, and they were great help throughout it, and really bought into the whole idea as well. So without Ben and Toby doing it, it may have happened, but it would have just been me on my own doing it, and nothing would have come off the back of it. But I think just their expertise were invaluable, to be honest, and their drive to create it was great.
Well, it's funny to hear you say, like, your initial thoughts were like, why would we make it? How would we do it? Who's even going to watch it? I always think the same things about that type of stuff, but then I sit there all night, every night, consuming like user-generated content on YouTube. I don't watch TV anymore. I watch things like this. And it doesn't matter if it's a 1 million view Red Bull video, or if I get fed a 500 view random video. If it's good quality and there's a story behind it, like,
exactly,
I'm engaged with it. Sometimes it's hard to think that about yourself, though, right? Like, who's going to want to,
of course,
listen to me talk? Because we're from Britain after all. So were there any moments on the day where you just thought, Ben, get the camera out of my face, I can't be asked with this at all?
Not that I remember, to be honest.
That's nice.
No, it all felt fairly natural. I think they were, because it was Toby, Ben, and another guy who were doing the filming, and I never at any point felt like they were in my face or shouldn't be in my face. And yeah, I guess when you're in a run or in an event, you're very focused on that, and you don't necessarily think too much about the sort of externalities around it. So there was never any point like that. I felt like that. I think there are some elements when I come across a little bit grumpy in the actual in the film, but it was never due to the fact that from what they were creating. And yeah, it's not something I've ever experienced before. So I think maybe if I had experienced it more, maybe I'd have been more aware of what was happening. But actually, it was it felt fairly natural, and that it was never irritating at all.
I mean, that's how the best things are made, though, isn't it? It's you're out there with your mates, and they're doing it in a
Yeah,
respectful way, and
exactly.
you're all kind of just in it. So if you didn't feel grumpy at any points or come across as grumpy, it probably wouldn't feel very real because,
Yeah,
as we said before, plenty of low points, and it's not an easy thing
yeah,
to
yeah,
do. Yeah, well, like I said before, anyone who's listening, definitely go and check out the video. It gives you a really nice kind of snapshot of the area, and obviously allows Ed to kind of tell a bit more of his story with Toby and Ben and the rest of the people involved, with some amazing visuals, because it really is a stunning part of the country, and it does have a
yeah,
very unique aesthetic. Like, I know we I want to get away from the word bleak because it's not.
yeah.
It,
It's not.
it
Yeah,
isn't the right. It depends. Like,
yeah, yeah,
uh, the peaks can be incredibly bleak when it's blowing a gale and chucking down rain. I know places like Dartmoor and whatever, I always think of as like very bleak, but it's probably not. It's not the best description of
No,
the area. So
it isn't. I
yeah,
think that's bleak is probably like a snapshot in time. Like you go to these places, and just due to the fact it's British weather, it's quite often rainy, wet, windy, whatever. But actually, I think what is unique about the Beacons is it's very green. It's not high uh, the Highlands, for example, which actually, I guess if we're going to assign another color to it, the Highlands is quite grey and rocky
yeah,
and craggy. And it's the same with the Lake District, although it's not as high, it's very craggy and rocky. Whereas throughout the Beacons, it's sort of this green rolling hills, which are arguably much more inviting, and much more aesthetically pleasing. How I know I'm biased in this, but I know it's a personal perspective. Some people might prefer that cragginess, but it's a very different very different sort of aesthetic feel to it than it is the larger mountain ranges that we think of.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, if people have heard of the Brecon Beacons, I imagine they've probably heard of the peak that we've mentioned a few times, and if they're
Mm.
English, they'd probably call it Penny Fan, um, which I'm sure you've heard plenty of times. But you're pronouncing it correctly, obviously, as Penny Fan, Penny Van. How do I pronounce it properly?
Penny, to be honest, Penny Van is the right way to say it. But
Penny Fan.
one of my friends will actually say Pen Y Fan, so you actually pronounce it quite well for someone from
For an
England.
Englishman. Okay, fine,
Yeah,
I'll say that. So like obviously that's the most famous peak in the range, right? I would imagine that's
yeah,
the only
yeah.
summit that I've heard of.
Absolutely, and that was another reason for doing it. Really, is to draw the attention away from Pen y Fan, is that there is so many more hills to go and explore. And if you I mentioned it before, but Story Arms is where everyone goes and parks and walks up Pen y Fan. I'm sure there's similar ones for Scarfell and things, but you basically start halfway up the hill. It's the most well trodden track I imagine in the UK, and everyone just goes there for a day, which is great. And you experience the hills, but you get to the top and there's a queue for to take a picture of the not the trig point, but the summit, and it's almost takes away that the personal touch you can get with the mountain, and that solidarity that you can get with the mountains and the hills. And kind of one of the things I wanted to show is that there's these 20, 30 different hills in the Beacons that aren't Pen y Fan and are not untouched. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of people that go to them, but they're just so much more untouched than Pen y Fan, and even the hill opposite called Van Vower, which you get a beautiful view of Pen y Fan, and then even better view the other way, and no one goes up it. It's everyone just goes up Pen y Fan. Yeah,
you can go up the aesthetic peak because that's the name, but really you want to go up the next peak to it to look at the famous peak.
Yeah. And it's I just wanted to try and draw the attention away of anyone coming. You know, it hasn't gone out to millions of people, the video, but anyone that does, who's watched it, will actually will hopefully think, well, actually, I don't want to go up Pen y Fan, I want to go up Fan Fawr or to the lakes that I mentioned earlier, or Tor of Oil, or things like that. It kind of brings attention away from just going up Pen y Fan and queuing to have your picture at the top, because there's so much more to explore.
Well, and people do what they know. Like, it's maybe a bit of a cliche thing to say, but the queues and like hordes of people going up the Llanberis Path to the summit of Snowdon since COVID, like obviously it was already really popular, but it just seems like it's exploded since. Well, for a load of good reasons, right? Lots of people got into running during COVID. They want to get outdoors. They want to get away from people. That is not that. Like, that is 10,000 people on a paved path. It's awesome. I love the Llanberis Path. It's lovely. Snowdon's great. But there are a lot of other peaks in North Wales that are just as cool, where you're not going to see another person and you're going to get a completely different experience. Same goes for Scarfell and all these spots. And I do think there's loads of platforms nowadays that people can use if they want to make a little bit of effort, whether that's like buying a guidebook, which is kind of the old school way, but I love a good guidebook and a good map. But if
buying a map
that way inclined, buying a map and just looking at the lines and learning how to read an Ordnance Survey map, because Ordnance Survey maps in the UK have an insane amount of information on them. Detail is ridiculous. But even if you're not that person, websites like All Trails, Strava, Heat Maps, going on Instagram and being inspired by imagery, like the only way these other peaks and trails and loops get their name out there is by people like yourself going out, sharing them with the community on the internet in whatever form, and then a few people start to go, and then people start to see pictures and they think, oh right, so it isn't just park at this pub, walk up this path, walk back down, go home. There's loads of other places to explore. Which also spreads out a little bit of that environmental impact, which you mentioned earlier, because I would imagine, like, you know, we were just in the peaks at the weekend, and the path up from kind of the loose hillside up towards the summit of Mantor, it's all these obviously big paving slabs that they've dropped in with a helicopter, because there's so much erosion, because there's so much foot traffic, but then because the path's busy, you've got people going off the path and there's dogs, and it does have a significant impact.
It does, and it's something that sort of plays on my mind quite a lot, and it's great, you know, encouraging people to come to the beacons, but there is always that negative impact which we don't necessarily see day to day. It's something that will take time to see the repercussions of. So there is certain sort of confliction that I have to doing this, but but I think you're absolutely right when you say about trying to expand it, and it's not just Snowdon, it's not just Pen y Fan that you can go to, but I think it's something that trying to spread that footfall is something that we'll definitely benefit from.
100%. And for anyone listening who's kind of new to trail running, and you're looking at races overseas and traveling to amazing parts of the world to take part in events like we all kind of aspire to do, and everyone loves the idea of running races in the French Alps or in Spain, or flying over to the US, or traveling to Australasia, whatever it might be, the number of times you hear people describe places like Tasmania as like, oh, you know, it's quite like Wales, or, you know, other parts of the world that you think of as spectacular, and they get described as really similar to the terrain you get in Scotland. The lesson to learn is, like, we've got some incredible places on our doorstep that they're pretty undiscovered, and I think the Beacons is definitely one of those. So you can escape the crowds of the lakes, you know, during the summer holidays when you queued up in a ton of traffic, and head out to a new part of the world and meet some new people, get some new views, and get out on some new trails. So if someone was going to do that, Ed, how would you recommend someone starting out doing that? If someone's going to leave this podcast and go and look at a map and plan a little weekend away, or look for Airbnbs or camping or whatever, are there particular towns and the particular areas that you'd recommend that are kind of accessible and have good access to some of the lesser known trails?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the downsides to the round, is that there's nothing, as I mentioned, there's nothing really on the route. So it's not like you can like with the Bob Graves, like you can stay on the route and just run from there. But yeah, there is loads of towns that have access to the beacons. The little, I say town, that's overstatement. It's definitely a village. Is Talabon, which has got one of the best access to cycling, running routes as well. But then obviously with it, Brecon has lots of amenities, and you can access the beacons really easily. So yeah, there's quite a lot of places. I currently live in a place called Langors, which doesn't actually have access to the Round, but has access to the Black Mountains on the east side of the beacons really easy. So there's loads of different places that you can go to, and yeah, I would highly recommend people coming to visit, because it is it's definitely an untouched. Avoid Story Arms would be my recommendation.
There you go. It's the insider tip. Actually, our event, which I kind of started the call with and was the premise of us being put in touch in the first place, which is happening on the 9th of August, so only about 3 weeks away from now, does start finishing Talibon. So obviously, that's
perfect.
A key location. And
yeah,
we've got 10K, 24K, and a 51K. I know that my colleague Sam, so normally I've been really, really heavily involved with all of the Summit Series trail events, and almost all of them I've run almost all of the courses and drawn them and whatever. But this Brecon Beacons event was one that came about when I was quite focused on the new European events. So Sam's taken a lead on it, and I know he hadn't been out to the Brecon Beacons until, let's say, 6 months ago, when he went out to do a bit of a recce and get eyes on some of the loops, and he just came back like stunned at how cool it was. Like, obviously we went with the intention of knowing it was going to be a good event, and we wouldn't have tried to put it on if we didn't think it had a load of potential. But yeah, he was definitely like surprised and really pleasantly kind of impressed by the quality of the trails, the views, the terrain, and he just came back buzzing like, oh my god, it's going to be so good, we need to do this and do that and show it off in these different ways. And so yeah, it's exciting, it's cool.
No, that's good to hear that Talibon is where the race is. And yeah, I mean, just a description of Talibon, like there's a beautiful reservoir in the valley that I'm sure anyone enters the race will run past, and then it's got hills either side that I'm sure the runners will be going up as well. So yeah, it's a stunning place, and definitely one to enjoy once you're there.
Awesome. Well, I guess Visit Wales or whatever are going to have to reach out and look at giving you a job, because you've done a pretty good job of promoting the area.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, just thanks a lot for your time. It's really nice to meet you, and it's just so cool to hear these different stories from people who integrate into the running community in different ways, and the fact you want to share it with everybody, just so similar to what we always want to do, which is just find cool places and find a way to share them with other people. So it's like the most fulfilling thing in the world. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time as well, and I hope the event in the Beacons goes well, and good luck to anyone who's doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. If you've not signed up yet, head over to runthroughtrails.com, have a look at the Brecon Beacons page, choose your distance, like I said, 10K, 24K, 51K. I think Ed's done an amazing job of describing the type of terrain, like accessible but still challenging. Fingers crossed we get some good weather. We stuck it in August, obviously, because I'm not going to say it, but how can it not be sunny? But we know it could easily
Don't say
not be. And yeah, hopefully we'll be seeing you all over in Talibon for an amazing day of running. And the event can just grow and grow from there. We can get more people out to the area, and all the benefits that come along with that. But yeah, thanks a lot, Ed. Really great to meet you. Great to hear your story. And like I said, anyone who's not checked out the video on YouTube, we'll be linking it in the description. So go and check that out. If you're running the race, build a bit of excitement ahead of it. And even if you've got no interest and you're just looking for new places to go away for the weekend with the family, definitely go and have a look, because it's a stunning part of the world.
Brill. No, cheers, James. Thanks for that.
Awesome. All right, cheers, Ed. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time.